The worst part about being rejected is not the rejection. It's the walk back home afterward, holding flowers you no longer know what to do with, rehearsing all the ways you were going to pretend you're fine. I was 31 years old, an assistant manager at a downtown Portland bookstore, and I had somehow managed to become the kind of man who bought tulips for a woman who texted him 8 minutes before dinner that she wasn't feeling the connection. 8 minutes. Not even enough time to cancel the reservation without sounding like a man who had been emotionally drop-kicked in a parking lot. So, I ate alone. That's the part I usually leave out. I sat at a small table near the window of an Italian place called Marzano's, with a vase between me and an empty chair, and told the waiter, "She's running late," like that sentence had any dignity left in it. He was kind enough not to make a face. I ordered the cheaper pasta, drank one glass of red wine too fast, watched couples lean toward each other under low lights while I tried not to check my phone every 30 seconds like a man waiting for a governor's pardon. By the time I got back to our apartment, rain had softened the paper around the tulips, and my jacket smelled like garlic, humiliation, and public transportation. Our apartment was on the third floor of an old brick building with pipes that complained at night and a front door that stuck unless you hip-checked it. I did that quietly because it was almost 10, and because my roommate, Nora Whitaker, had a habit of falling asleep on the couch with documentaries playing and one sock missing. Nora was 29, a pediatric nurse, and the kind of woman who could make instant ramen look like a culinary choice instead of a cry for help. We'd been roommates for 9 months, ever since my cousin moved in with his girlfriend and left me with a lease I couldn't afford alone. Nora answered my ad because, according to her, it was the only listing that didn't sound like a serial killer wrote it. I told her that was the nicest thing anyone had ever said about my grammar. We were friends, good friends, safe friends. That was the word I used whenever my brain did something reckless, like notice the curve of her mouth when she was trying not to laugh, or the way she tucked her hair into a messy knot after long shifts, or how she sang off-key in the kitchen when she thought I was still asleep. Safe. Meaning impossible, does she? Meaning, oh, don't ruin the rent situation, idiot. That night, the apartment was dim except for the lamp by the couch. Nora was not asleep. She was cross-legged on the floor in plaid pajama pants, surrounded by laundry she had clearly folded and then abandoned out of moral exhaustion. She looked up when I came in. Her eyes went straight to the flowers, then to my face. "Oh no," she said softly. I tried to smile. "Good evening to you too." She stood, brushing a dryer sheet off her hip. "You're home early." "Technically, I stayed for the whole date." Her eyebrows pulled together. "Technically?" I held up the tulips like evidence at trial. "She didn't make it." Nora's expression changed in that quick nurse way she had, where concern arrived before questions. "Caleb." That was my name, Caleb Brooks. And usually I liked how she said it. Dry when I forgot dishes, amused when I made terrible puns, gentle when the world had been unkind. Tonight, hearing it made my chest tighten. I dropped my keys into the bowl by the door and tried for casual. "It's fine." She texted, very respectful, efficient even. Saved us both the trouble of pretending my shirt was interesting. Nora crossed the room. "What did she say?" I pulled out my phone before I could think better of it. Maybe I wanted proof that I hadn't invented the embarrassment. Nora read the message aloud quietly. "Caleb, I'm sorry for the late notice, but I don't think I'm feeling the connection. You're a great guy, though." She stopped at the last line and looked up. I shoved the phone back into my pocket. There it is, the gravestone engraving of modern dating. Great guy, though. Nora's mouth twitched, but she didn't laugh. "Did you already go to the restaurant?" I was at the table. Her face fell. "Oh, Caleb." I looked away because sympathy from Nora was dangerous. It didn't feel like pity, it felt like being seen, which was worse. "I ate," said. So at least the evening wasn't a total loss. The waiter and I developed a strong emotional bond. "Did he turn you down too?" "Only when I asked if he could bring me a new personality." That got her. A small laugh slipped out, and just like that, the apartment felt less sharp around the edges. She took the tulips from my hand before I knew she was reaching for them. Her fingers brushed mine, cool from the room, and the contact lasted half a second too long to ignore. Or maybe I was just lonely enough to measure half seconds. These are pretty, she said. They were supposed to say, I am thoughtful but not intense. They say that. They also say, I don't know when I'm beaten. Nora glanced up at me through a loose strand of auburn hair. I like that in a man. I went still. She turned toward the kitchen too quickly, like she hadn't meant to say it that way. Or maybe I hadn't meant to hear it that way. The kitchen light flickered when she flipped it on. She found a mason jar under the sink, filled it with water, and arranged the tulips with more care than they deserved. I leaned against the counter, trying not to watch her hands. Nora had capable hands. Steady hands. Hands that had once stitched a button back onto my coat while lecturing me about being an adult who owned exactly one needle and zero thread. Hands that looked small until you saw what they carried. You didn't have to bring those home, she said. What was I supposed to do? Leave them on the table like a Victorian ghost? You could have given them to someone. I just did. She paused. The jar sat between us on the counter, yellow tulips leaning toward her. For a second, neither of us moved. Then she smiled, but it wasn't her usual quick, sarcastic smile. It was quieter, almost careful. Well, she said, thank you. Something shifted in the room. Not loudly, not dramatically, but enough that I noticed the hum of the refrigerator, the rain ticking against the window, the fact that we were standing close enough that if I reached out, I could touch the sleeve of her sweatshirt. I cleared my throat. Don't thank me. Their rejection flowers might be cursed. I'm not scared. No, she shook her head. I work 12-hour shifts with toddlers who bite. Your cursed tulips don't intimidate me. I laughed, and she leaned back against the counter across from me. There was a warmth in her eyes that I didn't know what to do with. Maybe that was the truth. I had spent months knowing exactly how to live with Nora, how to split groceries, how to argue about thermostat settings, how to pretend I didn't notice when she came home exhausted and still asked about my day. But I had no idea how to stand in a kitchen with her looking at me like I was not just convenient company. So, she said, was this the woman from the coffee shop? Yeah, Paige. The one who said she liked rare books? That should have been my first warning? Why? She called a first edition a vintage hardcover. Nora gasped. Monster. I ignored the signs because she had nice eyes and laughed at my joke about Hemingway. Nora folded her arms. I laugh at your Hemingway joke. You laugh at me, not the joke. Same thing, usually. I pointed at her. That is hurtful and accurate. Her smile lingered, then softened. Were you excited about her? That question landed differently. I looked down at the counter. There was a tiny chip in the laminate shaped like Idaho. I had stared at it through bills, takeout, hangovers, and Sunday morning coffee with Nora sitting across from me. I was excited about being excited, I admitted. She didn't tease me. That made it harder. I thought maybe I was ready, I said. After Vanessa, I mean. I thought if I could sit across from someone new and not compare everything to the disaster, that would be progress. Nora knew about Vanessa. Not the whole mess, maybe, but enough. The engagement that ended 3 months before the wedding. The apartment I lost. The version of myself I had packed into boxes and never fully unpacked. Nora's voice went gentle. It is progress. Getting stood up? Coming home and telling the truth instead of pretending you had a great time. I looked at her then. There were people who comforted by saying the obvious thing loudly. Nora didn't. She just found the door you'd left cracked open and stood there until you decided whether to let her in. That's annoyingly wise, I said. I'm off tomorrow. My wisdom has nowhere else to go. I smiled. Lucky me. Yeah, she said, and her voice dipped just a little. Lucky you. The rain got heavier. She looked at the tulips, then back at me. Did you really want to go on that date? I blinked. That's a strange question. It's a simple one. I thought I did. That's not an answer. It's the best I've got. Nora nodded, but something crossed her face. Not jealousy exactly. Something more vulnerable. Like she had stepped too close to an edge and only just realized it. I pushed off the counter. I should probably change out of my rejected man costume. She didn't move. Caleb, she said. I stopped at the hallway. When I turned back, Nora was gripping the edge of the counter with both hands. Her cheeks had gone pink, and she looked furious with herself. What? She let out a small laugh with no humor in it. Nothing, sorry, it's stupid. Nora, her eyes met mine. For 9 months, we had lived inside safe little rules. Separate shelves, separate laundry, separate dating lives. No questions asked when one of us came home late. No comments when one of us looked too long. But that night, with rain on the windows and another woman's rejection sitting in a mason jar between us, Nora broke one rule with 6 quiet words. I wouldn't have turned you down. For a second, I honestly thought I'd misheard her. Not because the words were unclear, because they were too clear. I stood in the hallway with one hand braced against the wall, still wearing my damp jacket, while Nora stared at me from the kitchen like she wished she could snatch the sentence out of the air and swallow it whole. I said intelligently, "What?" She closed her eyes. Please don't make me repeat that. I'm not trying to make you. I'm trying to make sure my brain didn't add something. Her eyes opened. What would your brain add? Wishful thinking, apparently. That got her attention. The color in her cheeks deepened. Caleb. I took one step back toward the kitchen. Nora. Don't do that. Do what? Say my name like it matters. It does matter. Her fingers tightened on the counter. I had seen Nora handle blood, vomit, screaming children, angry parents, broken elevators, and me attempting to assemble a bookshelf. I had never seen her look this nervous. It did something devastating to me. You said you wouldn't have turned me down, I said carefully. She tipped her head back and stared at the ceiling. Yep, I did say that, out loud, with my actual mouth. Did you mean as a friend? Like, morally? She looked at me again, and despite the panic in her face, her mouth curved. Morally? I'm giving you exits. I noticed. Take one if you want. She inhaled, slow and shaky. I don't want. Everything inside me went quiet. The apartment seemed smaller suddenly, warmer. The tulips on the counter looked less like evidence of failure and more like witnesses. I walked back into the kitchen but stopped with the island between us because my instincts were currently a fistfight between hope and common sense. Nora, I said, we live together. I know, I was here when I moved in. If this gets weird, it's already weird. You're standing there smelling like expensive pasta and emotional damage. I laughed once because if I didn't, I might do something reckless, like cross the room and kiss her before asking if she wanted that. She smiled too, but it faded fast. I didn't plan to say it, she said. For the record, I had a whole plan to never say anything. That was the plan? It was very detailed. What did it involve? Some avoiding eye contact when you came out of the bathroom in a towel. My brain short-circuited. She covered her face with both hands. Oh my God, I'm moving out. No, I said too quickly. Her hands lowered. The word hung there, revealing more than I meant it to. I softened my voice. Don't. Nora looked at me for a long moment. You don't want me to? No. As a roommate? I swallowed. Not only as a roommate. Her lips parted. There it was, the ledge. The place we had both apparently been standing on, pretending the view wasn't terrifying. I gripped the back of a chair. I didn't let myself think about you that way. Liar, she said softly. I huffed. Fine, I didn't let myself think about you that way for more than 10 minutes at a time. Her smile came back, shy and bright enough to ruin me. When? Unfair question. I confessed first. You owe me. I looked down, rubbing the back of my neck. When you dance in the kitchen. I do not dance. You absolutely dance. I sway while stirring things. You nearly took out the trash can during Dancing Queen. That trash can had it coming. I laughed, and she did too, and suddenly we were us again. Except not us at all. Every joke had a pulse under it now. I said, when you fall asleep on the couch and get mad at the documentary for continuing without you? That's private. You do it in the living room. Still private. When you bought my favorite cereal after I had that awful inventory week and pretended it was because there was a sale. Her expression changed. I kept going because apparently I had been carrying a list. When you call your patients my tiny dictators, when you leave me coffee before early shifts, when you laugh and try not to, when you look at me like I'm not leftover pieces from someone else's life. Her eyes glistened. I regretted the last sentence immediately. It was too much, too honest. But Nora didn't flinch from it. She came around the island, slowly, like I was the nervous one. Which, to be clear, I absolutely was. She stopped close enough that I could smell her lavender detergent and the peppermint tea she'd been drinking. She reached for my tie, a tie I had worn for a woman who never showed, and loosened the knot with careful fingers. My breath caught. "You're not leftover pieces," she said. I looked at her hands because looking at her face felt dangerous. "No?" "No." She slid the tie free and draped it over the back of the chair. "You're a whole disaster." A laugh broke out of me, shaky and grateful. Her fingers stayed lightly against my shirt front, not holding me there, just touching, asking a question. I answered by covering her hand with mine. Nora's eyes lifted to mine. There were 1,000 reasons not to lean closer. Rent, friendship, shared towels accidentally mixed in laundry, the possibility of losing the only home that had felt like one in years. But her thumb moved against my palm, barely there, and every reason got quieter. "Can I ask you something?" she whispered. "Anything. If Paige hadn't canceled tonight." I winced. "Nora, no, I'm not asking to hurt myself. I just need to know." She took a breath. "Would you have come home and kept pretending with me?" I wanted to give her an easy answer. She deserved the true one. "Probably," I said, "because I'm a coward." Her face softened. "But I would have been pretending," I added. "That part matters." She nodded, like she was tucking the answer somewhere tender. Then, because she was Nora, she said, "I also would have worn better pants for my confession if I'd known." I glanced down at her plaid pajamas. "I don't know. They're persuasive." "Don't flirt with my pants." "I'm flirting with the woman in the pants." Her smile went helpless. And that was when I knew I was in real trouble. Not because I wanted her. I had wanted her in quiet, deniable ways for months. Because I liked wanting her. Because it didn't feel like panic or performance or trying to prove I was healed enough to be loved. It felt like stepping into a room where someone had already saved me a seat. Nora drew her hand back, but only to point at the living room. "Sit." "Am I in trouble?" "Probably, but first, we are fixing your date." "My date?" "Yes, you got rejected, ate sad pasta, and came home with flowers for me. That is not a complete evening." "What are you proposing?" She lifted her chin. "A do-over. Right now. Couch, tea, leftover cheesecake. I'll ask you charming questions and you'll pretend not to be impressed." I stared at her. She arched an eyebrow. "Unless you're turning me down." I moved before fear could catch up. I took her hand. Her fingers slid between mine like they had been waiting. "I wouldn't turn you down," I said. Nora's smile trembled at the edges, but she squeezed my hand once, hard. "Good," she said. "Then take off your shoes, Caleb Brooks. You're on a date." Our first date happened 12 feet from my bedroom. That should have made it less intimidating. It did not. Nora lit the lamp by the couch, changed the documentary from Unsolved Shipwrecks to a jazz playlist, and arranged 2 mugs of peppermint tea on the coffee table like she was hosting a dignitary instead of a man who had just taken off wet dress shoes and revealed one sock with a hole in the toe. She noticed immediately. Her gaze dropped. Her mouth pressed flat. "Don't," I warned. "I'm not saying anything. You're radiating judgment. I'm simply observing that your sock has a ventilation system. This is why people don't date their roommates. This is exactly why people should date their roommates. Full disclosure from the start." I sat on the couch. "So this is a date?" Nora went still for half a beat, cheesecake plate in hand, then gave me a look that was all challenge and nerves. "You accepted, didn't you?" "I did." "Then yes." She set the plate down. "A date." The words settled over us like a blanket neither of us knew how to share yet. She sat beside me, leaving a polite 6 inches between us. 6 inches had never seemed so ridiculous. We had shared this couch during flu season. We had fallen asleep at opposite ends with a bowl of popcorn between us. Once, during a power outage, her cold feet had ended up under my thigh for warmth, and I had pretended not to enjoy being useful. Now those 6 inches felt ceremonial. Nora picked up her mug. So, Caleb, tell me about yourself. I stared at her. You know my dental insurance provider? Humor me. Fine. I'm 31. I sell books to people who think buying them counts as reading them. I make excellent scrambled eggs. I once cried during a dog food commercial, but in my defense, the dog had a backstory. Her eyes warmed. Green flag. Crying? Scrambled eggs. I leaned back. Your turn. She tucked one foot under her. 29. Nurse. Terrible at plants. Good with children. Suspicious of magicians. That last one is new. They know too much. Noted. No magic on future dates. Her smile flickered at future, small but visible. I caught it. So did she. Nora looked down at her tea and suddenly the banter thinned, revealing the truth underneath. We were both terrified. I reached for the cheesecake plate at the same time she did. Our hands collided. Sorry, she said. No, you. We both pulled back, then laughed, too loudly. This is absurd, I said. What? I have seen you unclog a garbage disposal with a wooden spoon and pure rage. Why am I nervous to share cheesecake with you? Because now if you take the last bite, it means something. Does it? Everything means something on a date. I picked up the fork and cut off a neat bite, then offered it to her. Her eyes lifted to mine. The air changed again. Slowly, Nora leaned forward and took the bite from the fork. Her lips closed around it, soft and careful, and every thought I had left abandoned me at once. She swallowed. Okay. My voice came out lower than expected. Okay. That meant something. I set the fork down before I embarrassed myself. Nora's cheeks were pink, but she didn't look away this time. Can I confess something else? I'm starting to like your confessions. I was jealous tonight. The words hit me square in the chest. Of Paige? She nodded, wincing like she hated admitting it. I helped you pick that shirt. You said the blue one made me look less tired. It does. It also makes your eyes do this annoying thing. My eyes annoy you? Constantly. She turned her mug between her palms. You left, and I told myself I was being ridiculous. That you're allowed to date, obviously, and I'm allowed to be normal. You, normal? Careful, you're on probation. I smiled, but she didn't quite. I kept imagining you at dinner, she said, making her laugh, doing the little self-deprecating thing you do so people won't notice how smart you are. I blinked. That's not what I do. Yes, it is. She looked at me. And I hated that she might get the version of you I wanted before I was brave enough to ask. There are sentences that don't just enter a room. They rearrange the furniture. I turned toward her fully. Nora. I know it's messy, she said quickly. I know we have a lease and a chore chart and exactly one decent frying pan between us, but I'm tired of pretending I don't listen for your key in the door. I'm tired of acting like it's casual when you save me the corner brownie because you know I like edges. I'm tired of wanting to touch you and only handing you the remote. My heart was beating so hard it felt unsustainable. She let out a breath. There. That's the speech. I'd like to resign from vulnerability now. I didn't laugh. I couldn't. Instead, I closed the 6 inches between us. Not all the way, just enough that my knee brushed hers. Nora, I said, I want to touch you too. Her breath caught. I lifted my hand, slow enough for her to stop me. She didn't. My fingers grazed the side of her face, brushing back that loose strand of hair I had wanted to touch 100 times and hadn't. Her eyes fluttered. The trust in that tiny movement nearly undid me. I think about you, I said, more than I should. more than makes sense. I think about telling you when something good happens. I think about whether you ate on your shift. I think about kissing you in the kitchen when you're yelling at the toaster. Her laugh came out shaky. The toaster deserves it. I know. My thumb rested near her cheekbone. Her skin was warm. I didn't want you to be a rebound from the life I lost, I said. You mattered too much to risk on me being lonely. Her expression softened into something fierce. I'm not afraid of your lonely. I am. Then let me meet it, she whispered. Don't hand me only the polished parts. That was the thing about Nora. She didn't ask for easy. She asked for real, then stood there with both hands open. I looked at her mouth. She noticed. The room held its breath. Can I kiss you? I asked. Her answer was immediate, quiet, and certain. Yes. I leaned in slowly, giving both of us one last chance to remember why this was complicated. Neither of us took it. The first touch of her lips was soft, almost careful, a question more than a claim. Then Nora made the smallest sound in the back of her throat and kissed me back. Everything I had been holding at a distance for 9 months came rushing in at once. The lavender of her sweatshirt, the warmth of her hand curling around my wrist, the taste of peppermint and cheesecake, the astonishing fact of her wanting me. I slid my hand to the back of her neck. She shifted closer, one knee pressing into the couch between us, her fingers gripping my shirt like she was anchoring herself. It wasn't a dramatic kiss, no thunder, no music swelling, unless you counted the quiet saxophone from the speaker. But it felt like coming home and discovering the door had been unlocked for months. When we finally pulled back, our foreheads touched. Nora's eyes stayed closed. Well, I smiled, breathless. Well, she opened one eye. I'm going to be unbearable about being your best first date. Best? Caleb, I gave you cheesecake and kissed you. Paige could never. I laughed, and she smiled against my mouth. Then she kissed me again, shorter this time, sweeter, like punctuation. When she drew back, her expression turned careful. We should be smart. Probably. Slow. Definitely. Rules. Some. She nodded, then glanced at the space between us, which no longer existed. Rule 1. If this gets confusing, we talk. Agreed. Rule 2. No pretending it didn't happen tomorrow. I touched her hand. I don't want to pretend. Her fingers threaded through mine. Rule 3, she said, softer now. You still make scrambled eggs in the morning. I grinned. Is that romance or a lease obligation? Her thumb stroked mine. Yes, she said. I woke up before my alarm with one thought. I kissed Nora. Then a second thought. I had to make scrambled eggs like a man whose life had not been rearranged by a woman in plaid pajama pants. The apartment was quiet. Pale morning light pressed through the blinds. For several minutes, I lay there staring at the ceiling, replaying the night in dangerous detail. Her hand on my shirt, her laugh against my mouth, the way she had said, no pretending. No pretending. That rule seemed easy at midnight with her fingers laced through mine. It seemed harder at 7:12 a.m. with bedhead and anxiety. I found her in the kitchen before I could spiral too far. Nora stood at the counter in yesterday's sweatshirt, hair piled messily on top of her head, reading the instructions on a bag of coffee like it had personally betrayed her. The tulips sat by the window, bright and impossible. She looked up when I entered. For one suspended second, we were just roommates in the kitchen. Then her eyes dropped to my mouth. And we were not. Morning, she said. Morning. You look terrified. I always look like this before eggs. No, you look like you're about to apologize to the eggs. I moved to the fridge because standing still felt risky. I'm not apologizing. Good. I may negotiate. She leaned back against the counter, watching me. Caleb. I shut the fridge with eggs in hand. Yeah? Are we being weird? Yes. Her mouth twitched. Okay. Are we being bad weird? I looked at her then. There was worry under the teasing. Real worry. She was trying to make it easy for me, which made me want to cross the room and make it impossible for either of us to hide. So I did. I set the carton down, walked over, and stopped in front of her. Nora's breath caught, but she didn't move away. No pretending, I said. Her expression softened. Then I bent and kissed her. It was a morning kiss. Warm, slow, a little clumsy because she smiled halfway through. Her hands came to my waist, fingers curling into my t-shirt like she was checking I was real. When I pulled back, her eyes were bright. Okay, she whispered. Good weird? Very good weird, I grinned. Excellent. Now I'm going to seduce you with protein. Bold strategy. You haven't had my eggs yet. I have lived here 9 months. Not date eggs. She laughed, and the sound settled something in me. We cooked together, which mostly meant I cooked while Nora sat on the counter and stole shredded cheese from the bowl. That's an ingredient, I said. That's a tax. You're a criminal. You kissed me before coffee. You knew the risks. I pointed the spatula at her. For the record, I'd do it again. Her smile went soft in a way that made the whole kitchen tilt. For the record, I'd let you. The eggs nearly burned. We ate at the tiny table by the window, knees bumping underneath. It should have felt domestic, but it felt like a secret door had opened inside the life we already had. After breakfast, Nora traced the rim of her mug. I have to ask something practical, and I hate it. Okay. If this doesn't work, she swallowed, do we lose everything? There it was, the shadow under the morning. I wanted to promise no. I wanted to tell her we were too careful, too kind, too us to ever ruin each other. But I had been engaged once. I knew love didn't automatically make people gentle. I don't want to lose you, I said. That's not an answer. I know. I reached across the table, palm up. She looked at my hand for a second before placing hers in it. I can't promise we won't get scared, I said. I said. I can't promise I won't be awkward or overthink things or panic because happiness feels like a prank. Her fingers tightened. But I can promise I won't punish you for being brave first. And I won't make you carry the whole risk alone. Nora blinked fast. I rubbed my thumb over her knuckles. If we do this, we do it on purpose. Not because Paige canceled, not because we're lonely and convenient, because I want you. Her lips parted. I held her gaze, my heart thudding. I want to take you on an actual date. Outside. With shoes that don't have holes. I want to hold your hand somewhere that isn't our couch and see if you still make fun of me in public. I will. I'm counting on it. Her smile trembled. When? Tonight? She stared. You move fast for a man who spent 9 months pretending not to notice me. I have a backlog. That made her laugh, and then she stood, still holding my hand, and came around the table. She settled onto my lap like it was a decision, not an accident. My hands hovered for half a second. She arched a brow. Caleb. Right, sorry. I rested my hands at her waist, and she relaxed into me. There was no way to pretend this was casual. Not with her knees bracketing mine. Not with her fingers smoothing the hair at my temple, not with the tulips glowing behind her like they approved. I'm scared too, she said. I know. But I don't want to go back. I swallowed. Neither do I. She kissed me then, deeper than the first time that morning, confident enough to make me forget the eggs, the lease, the entire state of Oregon. I held her carefully at first, then less carefully when she made a small, impatient sound and slid closer. When she pulled away, she was smiling. Tonight, she said. Actual date, but not Marzano's. Never Marzano's again? And no tulips? Too cursed? No, she glanced at them. Too sacred. By 7 that evening, I had changed shirts 3 times. Nora noticed, because of course she did. She appeared in the hallway wearing a green dress I had never seen before, simple and soft, with a cardigan over it and boots that made her look like she belonged in an indie film, where people fell in love over soup. I forgot every sentence I had prepared. Her cheeks pinked. That bad? That unfair? She looked down, smiling. Good answer. We went to a little ramen place 6 blocks away, walking under a sky that couldn't decide whether to rain. At the corner, our hands brushed once, twice. The third time, Nora hooked her pinky around mine. Is this your idea of subtle? I asked. Yes, I'm very mysterious. I turned my hand and laced our fingers together properly. She glanced at me, pleased and shy all at once. Dinner was easy in some ways and startling in others. I already knew how she took her tea, but I learned she hated first dates because everyone acts like they don't have weird elbows. She learned I once wrote poetry in college and threatened to find it. You will not survive the cringe, ma. I warned. I'm a nurse. Try me. Afterward, we walked home slowly. Outside our building, rain finally began, light enough to mist her hair. Nora stopped under the awning. So, was that a complete evening? I stepped closer. Almost. Her eyes lifted. I kissed her there, with the city damp around us and her hands warm inside mine. She smiled into it, then kissed me back like she was choosing me again. Not by accident, not by proximity, but on purpose. When we went upstairs, the apartment felt different. Not unfamiliar, just awake. Nora hung her cardigan by the door and turned to me, rain still caught in her hair. I don't want to sleep on the couch and pretend I didn't want you to ask me to stay up, she said. My pulse jumped. I took her hand. Then stay up with me. Her smile was slow and certain. No pretending, she said. No pretending, I promised. We stayed up, not in the reckless way my pulse suggested when Nora said it. Not at first. We changed into sweats, made tea neither of us finished, and sat on the couch with our legs tangled under the same blanket like we were negotiating a peace treaty between fear and want. Every few minutes, one of us would smile for no reason, then the other would smile back. It was embarrassing. It was wonderful. Nora leaned against my shoulder, her hair still faintly damp from the rain. I kept my hand around hers, rubbing my thumb over the inside of her wrist, because I had discovered very recently that I was allowed to touch her there. Allowed was a dangerous word. So was hers. I need to tell you something, she said. I looked down at her. If you're secretly a magician, this is going to be hard for you. She laughed softly, then grew quiet. I don't want to be your consolation prize. My chest tightened. You're not. I know you said that. I believe you. She shifted so she could see me better. But tomorrow, or next week, there might be a moment when this feels too fast or too easy, and I need you to tell me if that happens. I will. Promise? I lifted her hand and kissed her knuckles. I promise. Her eyes softened, but she wasn't done. And I need to promise you something too, she said. I won't use the fact that we live together to skip the part where I show up for you. I don't want us to become a couple by accident just because my shampoo is already in the bathroom. That is a compelling shampoo. Focus? I'm focused. No, you're looking at my mouth. I can do both. Her smile flickered. Caleb. I love the way she said my name now, like it still meant all the old things, roommate, friend, emergency jar opener, but had made room for something more. I hear you, I said, and I want the part where we show up. Dates, asking, choosing. All of it. She searched my face. You're sure? I thought about that restaurant table, the empty chair, the tulips drooping in wet paper. How humiliated I had felt walking home. Then I thought about Nora in the kitchen, saying the sentence that changed everything. I wouldn't have turned you down. Sometimes rejection is a door closing. Sometimes it's just noise loud enough to make you hear the person who has been quietly knocking all along. I'm sure, I said. I don't want this because I got rejected. I want this because when you said you wouldn't have turned me down, the first thing I felt wasn't relief. What was it? Recognition. Her eyes glistened. I brushed my thumb along her cheek. Like some part of me had been waiting for you to say it. Nora went very still. Then she climbed into my lap and kissed me. This time there was nothing uncertain about it. Her hands framed my face and mine settled at her back, pulling her closer. She kissed me like she was done being careful with every feeling, like bravery had finally become easier than silence. When she broke away, her forehead rested against mine. I wanted you for months, she whispered. I closed my eyes. I wanted you too. Even when I yelled at the toaster, especially then. Even when I wore the mouthguard, I opened one eye. Let's not test romance that hard. She laughed against my neck, and I held her while the rain tapped the windows and the tulips watched from the kitchen. Eventually, we did the responsible thing. Mostly. Nora went to her room. I went to mine. We stood in the hallway for a full minute, holding hands like teenagers, neither of us willing to be the first to let go. This is ridiculous, she said. Absolutely. I sleep 12 feet away. Cruel architecture. She rose onto her toes and kissed me once, soft and lingering. Good night, Caleb. Good night, Nora. She disappeared into her room. 3 seconds later, my phone buzzed. Nora, still not pretending. I stood in the dark hallway, smiling like an idiot. Me neither. The next few weeks were awkward in the exact way new happiness often is. We bumped into each other, brushing our teeth, and blushed like strangers. We argued over groceries and then remembered we could kiss afterward. We went on dates to places we had walked past 100 times. Taco trucks, used record shops. The Rose Garden on a cold Sunday morning where Nora tucked her hand into my coat pocket and called it efficient romance. We made rules, broke some, revised others. Rule 4, no relationship talks before coffee. Rule 5, if one of us panicked, we said so plainly. Rule 6, the couch was neutral territory unless both parties agreed it was not. We were very bad at Rule 6, but the important rules held. We talked. When I got scared that I was moving too fast because love had once ended badly for me, Nora didn't take it as rejection. She sat beside me on the kitchen floor at midnight, our backs against the cabinets, and said, I'm not Vanessa, and you're not the man she left. We can go slow without going backward. When Nora worried that she had ruined the safest home she'd had in years, I didn't tell her she was silly. I made her eggs, put the good coffee on, and reminded her, you didn't ruin it, you made it honest. By the following spring, there were signs of us everywhere. Her sneakers by my boots, my books on her nightstand, a framed photo from our third actual date where she was laughing so hard her eyes were closed and I was looking at her like a man with no defense left. The tulips didn't survive, of course. Flowers rarely do. But Nora pressed one yellow petal between the pages of a poetry collection she claimed she had bought, only to find my college poems and mock me properly. She never found them. I burned them like a coward. 6 months after that first terrible date that turned into our first real one, our lease renewal arrived in the mail. I found Nora at the kitchen table after her shift, still in scrubs, hair falling loose around her tired face. The renewal papers sat between us. For 1 second, old fear moved through me. Roommates, rent, risk. Nora must have seen it because she slid the pen across the table. Still want to live with me? She asked. It was teasing, but not only teasing. I picked up the pen. As your roommate? Her mouth curved. As your boyfriend, she corrected. I signed first. Then I turned the papers toward her. Nora signed beneath my name, and when she looked up, her eyes were shining. It wasn't a proposal, it wasn't a wedding, it wasn't the kind of ending people write songs about. It was better in that moment. It was choosing the ordinary on purpose. The same apartment, the same stubborn door, the same kitchen with the chipped counter shaped like Idaho. Only now, when I came home, Nora didn't pretend she hadn't been listening for my key, and I didn't pretend I hadn't been hurrying back to her. That night, we put the signed lease in an envelope, stuck it by the door, and danced barefoot in the kitchen to Dancing Queen. Nora nearly took out the trash can again. I caught her by the waist before she could commit property damage. She looked up at me, laughing, breathless and beautiful. I wouldn't have turned you down, she said, softer this time. I kissed her under the warm kitchen light with our names drying together on the lease and home blooming all around us. What would you have done if you came home rejected from a date and your roommate suddenly said, I wouldn't have turned you down? Have you ever experienced something similar where the person you needed was closer than you realized? Tell me your story in the comments. If you like this one, leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the